I've always struggled with reading. I lost count the amount of times that I think I'm reading the page, but my mind would go elsewhere, thinking about something that happened that day or what I'm going to eat tomorrow, if I need to water my plants and so on. I would look at a page and then read the same page over and over, trying to work out where I dipped off. I used to try to force myself to be a better reader by not going to bed until I read 10 pages of a book. I felt like I was treating it as a chore more than a hobby. I thought I was getting myself into a habit of reading before bed, but I would never be consistent. So most of the time I felt too tired to read and would just watch TV and go to bed because reading felt like too much of a task to do. I only properly picked up reading when I started uni. It was during the first lockdown and I started reading Prisoner of Azkaban to try and get into reading. Prisoner of Azkaban is my favourite and arguably the best Harry Potter film, so I figured that was a good place to start. It also looked tiny compared to some of the other Harry Potter books, and it was a kid's book, so I knew I wouldn't struggle reading it. I was on YouTube one day and someone got this video titled, "Dicks, do you need to be one to be a successful leader?" The video analyses how some big name directors are famously dicks and how it made them successful. To be honest, this video is almost entirely this guy's attempt at getting an interview out of director Peter Berg, who directed Battleship and Lone Survivor. He eventually meets Berg and he speaks about his process to becoming a director and how different people approach directing in a variety of ways. But what interested me most about the video was that he spoke about this book titled The 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene. For those of you who don't know, this is a book detailing how historical figures in history such as Napoleon, Machiavelli, Sun Tzu and so on use power to become successful in different ways. The book describes each chapter as a law, with each law being a vague tactic such as always seem effortless or master the art of timing. It's often seen as the self-help book and is recommended by a lot of successful people such as Jay-Z, Will Smith, Fidel Castro. 50 Cent has even released a book with the author titled The 50th Law, which I'll circle back to. My soon-to-be brother-in-law also had an interest in the book, so he bought it and he said I could borrow it. I picked up the 480-page book and was a bit taken back. Not only did this already fairly sizable book have a bunch of pages, but the writing was also tiny, and every page was littered with annotations on the sides. To anyone who's a keen reader, 480 pages doesn't sound too crazy, but I was not a keen reader and it felt like an impossible task. After a few laws in, I decided to ditch the small annotation on the book as it got a bit tedious. After 3 months, I eventually finished the book and moved to my second year house. I was studying film at uni, so I thought it made sense that I read more books relating to film. One of the essays I decided to write was about how black British characters are perceived in media. To try and seem clever, I got a Carla's book, Natives, and read that next. Things were still not properly open yet. I was still on furlough, so I was able to make reading part of my daily routine. Through reading in the daytime, I was able to get a better hold of reading and keep the habit. I think I really wanted to be a reader and enforce a habit that became a hobby, but I still saw reading as something I was doing as a task, rather than something I enjoyed. When things started to properly reopen again, most of my reading got put on hold. I tried doing my tactic of reading before bed, and although there was some improvements from last time, I still wasn't able to be consistent. Something in my head and I couldn't disassociate reading from being something to do before bed and nothing else. In my head it felt silly to read and then watch TV instead of the other way around. Or what would happen more often than not would be that I'd be on my phone and think to myself, oh, I'll read in a sec, and then continue doom scrolling for hours on end until I was too tired and just went to bed anyways. A short while after uni I set a challenge at the start of the year. I made it a goal to try and read at least 10 pages a day for the year. 3,650 pages seemed a bit overwhelming, but I thought it wasn't too hard of a challenge. Although I did get into the habit more, I still wasn't able to stick it and still saw reading as a challenge. In November of that year I started a new job, and suddenly I was getting a train every week. The job was mostly remote, but I went into it was once or twice a week. After years of not enjoying reading, I tried to set myself another challenge in the new year, to try and become a more active reader. I decided to make the challenge a little bit more realistic and achievable than the previous one, and set the challenge of reading 6 books in a year. I had read 6 books a year prior for my 10-page a day challenge, but 2 of the books were short comics that I could have read in a day if I really tried. I thought, if I could repeat what I did the previous year, but with more of a focus on longer books, I'd have improved my reading ability and be on the right track to making it a hobby. I started to only read when I was on train journeys. At first it was just because I didn't want to spend the journey wasting away on my phone, but encouraged me to read more. Sometimes I'd be going away on 3-hour-long train journeys, so I thought I'd make better use of my time to read rather than download a film on my phone. This sparked a weekly routine of reading on the train that completely converted my perspective entirely. I wasn't seeing reading as a chore or an attempt to make it a habit. I was looking forward to getting the train to work just so I could read. I no longer felt guilty for not reading every day or feel like I was forcing myself to read. I started to feel guilty if I didn't read on the train because it felt like it was the place dedicated to reading. I would listen to jazz music, film scores, or other instrumental albums that help me focus on reading on the train, which helped massively. Until I'll be listening to a film score and then an intense song will play, and then reading the book will feel more suspenseful than ever. I went from reading about 20 pages a week to reading a new book every month. I may not have been reading every day, but on days that I have been reading, I read about 100 pages. I used to open a book and force myself to read at least 10 pages a day just to get through it. I was enjoying it. Half the time I'd be just slowly counting down the pages until I reached my quota. I used to see pages but not read them. My mind was unable to enter the book and so would be constantly dancing around the edges. As well as my regular reading on the train, I also had a book by my bedside table which I was slowly getting through. I saw it as a no pressure book that I would just casually read from time to time and not feel that I wanted to finish it. The book was also huge, so I couldn't take it on the train without looking like a knob. I realised that I needed to make myself feel guilty for not reading on the train, like it was a ritual that if I didn't maintain would push me away from my faith, like I was cheating on the book with my phone. The shift in my mentality helped grow my reading habit to a point where I was able to achieve what I'd wanted to do all those years ago. Read as a habit, as a hobby, as something I was able to consistently complete without it feeling like a job. It's also around the same time I got prescribed my medication for ADHD. If you live in the UK and you've tried to get diagnosed with ADHD, you know that it can be a long, complex journey. It took me about 2.5 years until I got diagnosed. Now, I'm not going to talk about the process of getting diagnosed with ADHD, but what I do want to focus on is the medicine. Up until starting that job, I was experimenting with other medication. I wasn't getting them illegally or anything. The doctor just initially prescribed me a certain medication to test out, and then feed back to her to see if it made a positive or negative influence on my focus and attention. But most importantly, to see how it would affect my mental and physical health. The doctor initially prescribed me with a stimulant medication called Delmasart. Stimulants are drugs that are meant to keep you alert and help you focus, such as caffeine or more caffeine. I knew that I had a weird relationship with coffee, as sometimes it made me anxious, so I was slightly apprehensive. I was eager to try the medicine, however, to see if it would improve my attention and focus, so I gave it a go. The medicine was amazing at improving my focus. I was able to stay on track and not disassociate or get distracted. The problem was that it did make me anxious, and it suppressed my appetite. I used to have breakfast around 8 AM, and by 10 I was hungry again. Now I wasn't ever really feeling hungry at all. I would just eat for the sake of eating. Anyways, after a few more trials with different medications, we found a non-stimulant that seemed to have a positive effect on my ability to focus without having a negative effect on my mental or physical health. I feel like I'm able to complete more tasks at a faster rate than I previously could. I used to go on my phone and doom scroll for hours, feeling like I couldn't stop. It felt like I was getting sucked into a social media vortex and I couldn't get out. Now I can't do that alone, still spend a lot of time on my phone, but now, with the help of my medication, I'm able to see and feel that I'm on social media more and I can take myself away from it. I also got this app called OneSec. This app prevents you from going on social media by making you take a deep breath before you can open the chosen social media app. What it really is it takes a few seconds to load before it lets you click open social media, and usually I'm too impatient to wait so I don't go on it. It works perfectly with my ADHD, but it's had me watch a lot more YouTube shorts as a result. Anyway, the medication had a positive impact on my reading. I found that I was able to get lost in a book and not constantly worry about what page I was on or have my mind drift off elsewhere. I mean, don't get me wrong, when I'm on the train and I know that I'm near my stop, I'll flip ahead to try and find the right moment to stop reading so that I finish reading at a good point. I'm not an animal. As the months went by, I noticed I was reading at least a book a month. I wanted to hopefully keep this going, so I changed my goal from 6 books to 12 books. I used to look at my bookshelf overwhelmed with how behind I was with reading, thinking that I would never be able to catch up and read all the books that I wanted to. Now I was in a position where I'd be buying books more frequently and searching for more books to read. I predominantly read non-fiction books, as I enjoy learning about new things or finding out more about a certain person in history, art and film, so on. I enjoy autobiographies if it's about someone I admire and have an interest in, but I'm a bit more apprehensive now, as I feel a lot of autobiographies read the same. I tend to go for the more unconventional autobiographies like Matthew McConaughey's Green Lights or Jimmy Carr's Before and Laughter. Since I started taking this new medicine, as well as developing this new technique, or whatever you want to call it, about 14 months ago, I read 17 books. I found a new love for reading, and as a result I found more books on topics I'm interested in, and I can't wait to read more.